Look at her, useless, embarrassing, not even worthy to sit at my table. Here, let me crown you, the only way you deserve." With those spiteful words, he tilted his glass and poured wine over her head at the company dinner. Gasps filled the room, then cruel laughter rang out both his colleagues and their families, as she sat drenched, trembling, each drop of red burning like fire against her skin. Her face burned hotter than the wine, her heart shattered under the weight of mockery. She sat in silence, every tear swallowed, every breath a plea for the ground to open and hide her. That night, she was humiliated. That night, she was nothing. But fate does not forget. Hours later, in that same hall where she was shamed, the board rose to their feet and placed the crown of power not on him, but on her. This is the story of a woman broken in front of the world, and the twist that turned her humiliation into triumph. And today, it is being retold by me. Hello family, welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please, subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. Evelyn Carter stood in front of the mirror, brushing the last strand of her dark hair into place. The gown she wore was simple, navy blue, with sleeves that brushed her wrists. She had chosen it, carefully, elegant but not loud, modest but not plain. From behind her, Daniel's voice cut like a knife. "Really? That's the dress you picked?" His tone carried the same cold edge it always did. "Do you want people to think I dragged you out of a clearance store?" Evelyn froze, her hand stilling at her side. She hated how her heart jumped every time he spoke. Like that, as if her body had learned to flinch before her mind could. "It's fine, Daniel," she said softly, almost to herself. "It's a classic cut. It won't stand out." "That's exactly the problem," he snapped, striding across the room. His cufflinks glimmered as he adjusted his sleeves in the mirror, not sparing her a glance. "You're supposed to stand out because of me, Evelyn. Not because anyone thinks you have style or class or, God forbid, brains." She swallowed hard. She had learned long ago not to argue. The drive to the hotel ballroom was silent at first, broken only by the hum of the engine. Evelyn's hands twisted together in her lap. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Listen to me. Tonight is not about you. It's about me. My promotion, my recognition. You're there to smile, nod, and look good on my arm. That's it. Don't speak unless someone asks you a direct question. Don't try to impress anyone. Don't embarrass me." Evelyn nodded, her throat dry. "I understand." "Good." He smirked, glancing at her quickly. "You should be grateful, you know. Women would kill to be in your shoes. Without me, you'd still be in that little office, filing papers, no one even remembering your name." Her chest tightened. She wanted to say, "I've done more for this company than you ever knew. Written the reports you took credit for. I stayed late, carried the weight, made sure you looked good." But the words never left her lips, because if she said them, he would crush her. The grand hotel shimmered with light. Crystal chandeliers glowed through the glass doors, and the sound of laughter spilled into the night air. Evelyn stepped out of the car, her heels clicking against the pavement. She pulled her shoulders back, forcing herself to walk tall. And that was when she noticed. Eyes turned toward her. A small group of wives whispered and smiled, admiring the way her dress caught the light. A young man from accounting even nodded at her with a shy smile. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough for Daniel to notice. His jaw tightened as he placed his hand on the small of her back, pushing her forward. To anyone watching, the gesture looked affectionate, but Evelyn felt the pressure of his palm, sharp and punishing. "Don't get any ideas," he muttered under his breath. "They're looking at me, not you." The ballroom was alive with chatter, music, and clinking glasses. Long tables gleamed with silverware, and wine bottles. Evelyn sat beside Daniel, her hands folded neatly on her lap. Across the table sat Sophia Miller, Evelyn's best friend since college. Or at least that's what Evelyn had thought once. Tonight, Sophia's smile looked different, sharp at the edges. "Evelyn," Sophia said sweetly, leaning forward. "That dress looks nice. Simple. I guess that's always been your style." Evelyn forced a smile. "Thank you." Daniel laughed, a little too loudly. "Simple is right. But it suits her, doesn't it? Keeps her in her lane." The table chuckled politely, though Evelyn caught the flicker of discomfort in a few faces. She wanted the ground to open and swallow her, but she kept her composure as she always did. As the evening wore on, people came to greet Daniel. They praised his work, his dedication, his leadership. Evelyn sat silent, her presence ignored, except when Daniel introduced her with casual dismissal. "This is Evelyn. She's around." Her heart sank each time. Dinner was served: steak, potatoes, asparagus. Evelyn lifted her fork, but Daniel frowned. "Cold," he muttered, pushing his plate away. Then his eyes shifted to her. She had barely taken a bite, but something in his gaze made her stomach twist. He wanted to make a show. "Look at her," Daniel said suddenly, loud enough for the table to hear. "Sitting there, pretending. She belongs. Useless. Embarrassing. Not even worthy to sit at my table." Evelyn froze. The room went quiet, the music still playing faintly in the background like a cruel soundtrack. Sophia's lips curled into the faintest smirk. "Daniel," Evelyn began, her voice trembling, but he cut her off. He lifted his wine glass slowly, deliberately, his eyes never leaving hers. "Here," he said with mock ceremony, his words dripping with venom. "Let me crown you the only way you deserve." And then, with one swift motion, he tipped the glass forward. The red wine cascaded over her head, spilling down her hair, soaking into the fabric of her dress. Cold and sticky, it clung to her skin like fire. Gasps erupted around the table. For a moment, the room was stunned. Then came the laughter, cruel, sharp, cutting. Daniel laughed loudest, his voice echoing through the hall. Others joined, some nervously, others with genuine delight at the spectacle. Evelyn sat frozen, her face burning hotter than the wine. Every muscle screamed for her to run, to scream, to break something. But she didn't move. She sat trembling, drenched, her hands clenched, into fists on her lap. Each second stretched into an eternity. Each laugh was another knife. And across the table, Sophia sipped her own wine with satisfaction, her eyes glittering. As Evelyn finally rose to her feet, the whispers began. "Did you hear? Daniel and Sophia. They're always together after hours. I thought Evelyn was her best friend. How cruel. She's blind. Poor thing doesn't even see it." Evelyn's vision blurred. Whether from tears or the sting of the wine, she couldn't tell. She turned away, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she walked out of the hall. The laughter still rang behind her. But she didn't see the board members sitting at the far end of the table, their faces unreadable as they watched her leave. Evelyn pushed through the heavy ballroom doors, the sound of laughter chasing after her. She walked down the carpeted hallway, her heels clicking too loudly in the silence. The red wine clung to her hair, sticky against her scalp, dripping down her arms and staining her gown. She could hear them still: Daniel's booming laugh, Sophia's sweet, poisonous giggle, the murmurs of guests who would dine on her shame for weeks to come. Her chest tightened, her breaths came shallow. She wanted to scream, to rip the gown from her body, to disappear. But all she could do was keep walking. Inside the ladies' room, she stood in front of the mirror. Her reflection broke her heart. The woman staring back at her was drenched, humiliated, broken. The once simple navy gown was ruined, clinging to her like a rag. Her hair dripped red streaks down her face, as though blood had been poured over her instead of wine. A woman at the sink gasped. "Oh, honey!" She looked at Evelyn with pity, then quickly looked away, not wanting to be caught in the orbit of her disgrace. The door swung shut behind her, leaving Evelyn alone. Evelyn gripped the sink and bowed her head. Why does he do this to me? Why do I let him? She could still hear Daniel's voice in her head, sharp and cold from earlier in the evening. You're here for decoration, Evelyn. Just smile, keep your mouth shut, and be grateful. That's all she was to him. Decoration. A prop. And yet, she had built so much of his success in silence. Nights spent double-checking his reports. Emails drafted in her name but signed by him. The details she handled so he could shine. He never gave her credit. Not once. Instead, he gave her ridicule. Evelyn stepped back into the hallway. She couldn't return to the ballroom, not like this. But she couldn't go home either, not with Daniel holding the car keys. So she lingered near the exit, pressing herself against the wall as groups of guests walked past, whispering, "Did you see Daniel?" One man chuckled. The way he poured that wine, like he was knighting her. She looked so small. Another woman murmured, "I almost felt sorry for her." Don't waste pity. Everyone knows Sophia is the real woman behind him now. Evelyn's stomach dropped. She pressed her hand to her mouth, willing herself not to cry. She had suspected something between Daniel and Sophia, but hearing it like that, so casual, so certain, it was like another glass of wine had been poured over her soul. Meanwhile, back in the ballroom, Daniel basked in the glow of attention. He stood tall, laughing, with his colleagues, playing the charming man everyone loved. Sophia leaned close, whispering in his ear, "That was perfect. You finally showed her place." Daniel smirked. She needed the reminder. She should be thankful I even bring her to these things. Sophia's smile grew sharper. She won't last long. She's weak. But what neither of them noticed was the quiet gaze of the board members at the far end of the room. Richard Hayes, the eldest among them, sipped his wine slowly, his eyes narrowing. After some time, Evelyn re-entered the ballroom. She had dried her face and patted down her hair, but the stains remained, the humiliation fresh. She kept her eyes low, walking straight toward Daniel. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Can we leave now?" He turned to her, his grin broad and mocking. "Leave? Oh no, Evelyn. We just got started. You sit right there and enjoy the show." She swallowed hard, sitting back down, the laughter around her pressing like a weight. Sophia leaned forward, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Evelyn, dear, you should have brought a scarf. That wine really left a mark." Daniel chuckled. "She'll get used to it. That's what happens when you're not careful. Life pours all over you." The table erupted in laughter again. Inside, Evelyn screamed, but outwardly she stayed still. She folded her hands in her lap, her fingers digging into her palms until they hurt. She stared at her plate, the food untouched. Every laugh burned into her memory. Every smirk, every whisper, every insult etched deeper into her heart. But somewhere in the corner of her mind, a spark remained. A whisper, "Endure. Just endure. This isn't the end." Across the hall, Richard Hayes leaned toward another board member, his voice low. "She didn't fight back. Not once. Did you see that?" "Yes," the other replied. "She endured it all. Grace under humiliation." Richard's eyes lingered on Evelyn. "She's stronger than they know." As dessert was served, Daniel raised another glass. He tapped his spoon against it, drawing the room's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice booming, "I'd like to make a toast. To success, to the future, and to knowing your place." His eyes flicked toward Evelyn, daring her to react. The room laughed again, the sound echoing through Evelyn's skull. She rose from her chair, her legs trembling but her back straight. Without a word, she turned and walked out. This time she didn't look back. The laughter followed her out into the hallway once more, but she kept walking, faster now, her heels striking the floor like war drums. To everyone in the ballroom, it looked like she was leaving defeated, her spirit crushed beyond repair. But at the far end of the hall, Richard Hayes and two other board members exchanged glances. Their faces were calm, but their eyes were sharp. "She doesn't know yet," Richard murmured. "But she's not leaving with nothing tonight." And as the doors shut behind her, the stage was set. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give a future to children and women who have been abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Also, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from, and how did this story speak to you? The night after the company dinner, Daniel sat back in his leather chair, sipping whiskey with Sophia curled against him. They were in his apartment, far from Evelyn's quiet apartment across town. Sophia laughed, her voice sharp. "The look on her face when you poured that wine, Daniel, it was priceless." She sat there like a drowned cat. Daniel smirked, swirling the glass in his hand. "She needed it. Evelyn forgets her place sometimes. She starts thinking she's more than she is." "You mean she starts thinking she matters?" Sophia teased, brushing her fingers along his arm. "But she doesn't. You've outgrown her. She's holding you back." Daniel tilted his head, considering her words. "She's useful," he said slowly. "She does the grunt work, fixes my mistakes. She makes sure the numbers line up. But yes, she's not someone I'd ever let stand beside me when the spotlight hits. She's just a tool." Sophia's smile widened. "Then use her until she breaks. After that, you'll have me." They laughed together, a cruel harmony in the dim light. Across town, Evelyn lay awake in her small apartment. Her body still remembered the chill of the wine, the sting of laughter, the whispers about Daniel and Sophia. She stared at the ceiling, her thoughts racing. She remembered Sophia's voice at the table, that false sweetness. "That dress looks nice. Simple." Once, Sophia had been like a sister to her. They had shared secrets in college, laughed until dawn, promised to stand by each other for life. Evelyn had trusted her more than anyone. And now, Sophia sat across the table, smiling at her humiliation, feeding Daniel's ego. Evelyn pressed her hand against her chest, as though she could hold the pieces of her heart together. She thought of all the nights she had stayed up, double-checking Daniel's reports, covering his mistakes, writing his presentations. He had taken the credit every time. He had told her, "That's what a good fiancé does. She supports her man." And she had believed him. But now, alone in the silence of her apartment, she wondered if she had been nothing but a stepping stone all along. The next morning, Evelyn forced herself out of bed. She dressed neatly, pulled her hair into a bun, and went to work. The stares followed her the moment she entered the building. "Poor thing," someone whispered as she passed. "She should quit," another voice said. "After last night? I would." "She won't quit. Daniel won't let her." Her face burned, but she kept walking. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Later that day, in the boardroom, the air was different. Richard Hayes, one of the senior board members, sat at the far end of the long table. He was an older man with gray hair and sharp eyes, known for his silence more than his words. As Evelyn entered, she felt his gaze on her. Not pitying, not mocking, studying. During the meeting, Daniel spoke loudly, dominating the conversation as usual. He bragged about his team, his strategies, his vision for the future. Evelyn sat quietly, her notes organized in front of her, her eyes lowered. At one point, Richard leaned toward her during a pause. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "You do more than people think." Evelyn blinked, startled. "Excuse me?" Richard's eyes narrowed slightly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I've watched. You do more than you're given credit for. Much more." She opened her mouth to reply, but Daniel's voice boomed again. drawing the room's attention. The moment was gone, but Richard's words lingered in her mind like a quiet flame. That night, Daniel returned home late. He was drunk, his tie loosened, his steps uneven. Evelyn sat at the table, waiting, her heart heavy but her face calm. "You embarrassed me," Daniel muttered as he dropped into a chair. Her chest tightened. "I embarrassed you?" she asked quietly. "Yes," he snapped, his eyes narrowing. "Walking out like that, making me look like some kind of monster. Everyone was watching you." Evelyn bit her lip, fighting to hold back tears. "Daniel, you poured wine on me in front of the entire company." He waved his hand dismissively. "It was a joke. People laughed. You're too sensitive." Her voice broke. "Do you even care what that did to me?" Daniel leaned forward, his face inches from hers, his voice cold. "You don't matter, Evelyn. What matters is me, my career, my future. You're just here to make sure I get where I need to be." Her heart cracked, but she stayed silent. Later, after he fell asleep on the couch, she went into his study to gather the papers he always left scattered. As she stacked them neatly, one file slipped open. Her eyes caught numbers that didn't add up, transfers that shouldn't exist. Her pulse quickened. She leaned closer, flipping through the documents. Page after page revealed the same thing. Daniel had been embezzling company funds, moving money into private accounts. Her hands trembled as she held the papers. The truth was in her grasp, proof of his crimes. For a moment, she imagined storming into the living room, shoving the documents in his face, demanding answers. But then she stopped. No, not yet. If she confronted him now, he would twist it, bury her, make her look like a liar. She needed to be smarter. So she slid the papers back into the folder, her heart pounding. She hid her knowledge, pressing it deep inside, and quietly began to plan. The following week, Daniel and Sophia met again in his office, the blinds drawn, their voices low, but smug. "She still hasn't left you," Sophia said, her tone mocking. "After what you did at the dinner, I thought she'd run." Daniel smirked. "Evelyn won't run. She's too weak, too dependent. She needs me. Without me, she's nothing." Sophia leaned across the desk, her smile sharp. "Then cut her out completely. Push her away from the company. The board trusts you. If we convince them she's a liability, she'll have no place here. At all." Daniel tapped his fingers on the desk, considering. "Yes, make her invisible. Once she's out, it'll be just us." Evelyn, meanwhile, carried herself quietly at work. On the surface, she was the same. Polite, efficient, silent. But inside, she burned. Every whisper about Daniel and Sophia fed her pain. Every side glance reminded her of her shame. At night, she kept returning to those documents she had hidden. Proof of Daniel's embezzlement. Proof that he wasn't the golden man he pretended to be. She read them again and again until the numbers danced in her mind. It was all there, evidence that could ruin him. But still, she waited. She had learned something from years of being overlooked. Silence had power. Silence gave her time. One afternoon, as she sorted files in the office, Richard Hayes stopped beside her desk. His presence filled the room, though his voice stayed soft. "You're patient," he said. "That's rare." Evelyn looked up, startled. "I don't understand." "You do," he replied simply. His eyes held hers, steady and calm. "Patience isn't weakness. Sometimes it's strategy." Before she could respond, he walked away, leaving her with a chill and a spark of hope. The next board meeting came quickly. Evelyn dressed carefully, her hands trembling as she buttoned her blouse. The memory of wine dripping down her face still haunted her. She expected whispers, snickers, pitying looks. She braced herself for all of it. Daniel entered the room loud and confident, Sophia lingering close by. He slapped backs, cracked jokes, filled the air with his voice. Evelyn sat quietly at the edge of the table, almost invisible. The meeting began. Daniel spoke at length about his vision, his leadership, his plans for the company. Evelyn's stomach twisted at each lie, knowing how much of his success had been built on her silent labor. But then, as the meeting wound down, something unexpected happened. The chairman, seated at the head of the long table, looked directly at Evelyn. His gaze didn't slip past her as it usually did. It lingered, steady, measuring. Evelyn's breath caught. She lowered her eyes, her heart pounding, but she could feel it, the shift. For the first time, someone in that room saw her. Daniel kept talking, oblivious, his smile wide. But Evelyn knew something had changed, and as the chairman's gaze stayed fixed on her, she realized she wasn't as powerless as Daniel wanted her to believe. The weeks after the company dinner were worse than Evelyn could have imagined. It wasn't just the whispers in the office halls or the way people glanced at her with pity. It was the lies that spread like wildfire, each one dripping from Sophia Miller's lips. "She's not well," Sophia would say in hushed tones that weren't really hushed at all. "I worry about her, you know? She's been unstable for years." Daniel's been carrying the weight of that relationship all by himself. And people believed her. They always did. Sophia had the kind of voice that slid into your ears and made you trust her. She played the caring friend in public, always looking concerned when Evelyn walked into a room, tilting her head with sympathy as though Evelyn were fragile glass, about to shatter. "She has these outbursts," Sophia continued one afternoon in the break room, sipping coffee as a small crowd leaned in. "Daniel tries so hard with her. He's patient, but she, well, you know, not everyone can be saved." Daniel himself backed up every word, nodding solemnly when asked, sighing heavily, painting himself as the man who had sacrificed everything to stand by his troubled fiancée. "She has a good heart," he would say with a weary smile, "but she's fragile. I do my best to protect her from herself. I can't give up on her." And so the story was sealed. Evelyn, the unstable woman. Daniel, the patient, long-suffering hero. Sophia, the loyal friend trying to hold things together. Evelyn felt the walls closing in. Her colleagues avoided her. Neighbors in her building whispered behind closed doors. Even at the grocery store, she thought she saw pity in the cashier's eyes. The cruelest blow came from her own brother, Michael. One evening, she visited him, desperate for comfort. Michael had always been her anchor, her one safe place when everything else fell apart. She sat in his living room, her hands twisting in her lap, her voice breaking. "Michael, you have to believe me. I'm not crazy." "Daniel, he's lying." "Sophia too. They've turned everyone against me." Michael leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. His eyes were cold in a way she had never seen before. "Evelyn," he said slowly, "maybe you should look in the mirror. Daniel has been nothing but good to you. He provides for you, supports you. And Sophia has been like a sister. Do you know how you sound right now? Bitter, paranoid, a disgrace." Her breath caught. "A disgrace." "Yes," he said firmly. "That's what you've become. To the family, to the company. You walk around dripping with shame, blaming everyone but yourself. Do you think Dad would be proud of you? Do you think he'd want this?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Dad would never have sided with Daniel over me." Michael's lips curved into a humorless smile. "Dad's not here anymore, is he?" And then she saw it. The way his watch gleamed. An expensive brand she knew he could never afford. The way his eyes flicked when she mentioned Daniel. "You took something from him," she whispered. "Money. Promotion. What did he promise you?" Michael, he didn't deny it. He just looked away. The truth hit her harder than Daniel's insults ever had. Her brother, her blood, had sold her out. That night, alone in her apartment, Evelyn finally broke. She collapsed on the floor, sobs shaking, her body until her throat burned. She cried for the sisterhood she had lost in Sophia, for the love she had wasted on Daniel, for the betrayal of her only brother. She had no one, but in the middle of her despair, Richard Hayes's words returned to her, quiet but steady. Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits. She wiped her tears with trembling hands. Wait, that's what she had been doing. Gathering strength, gathering proof. The days that followed were heavy but different. She went to work, silent as always, but inside her heart, something had shifted. She began watching more carefully. She kept her head down but her eyes and ears open. She filed away every conversation, every slip of paper, every detail. She was building something, though she didn't yet know what. Then one morning, a sealed envelope arrived at her door. Heavy cream paper, her name written in neat handwriting. She hesitated before opening it, her heart pounding. Inside was a letter from the board of directors. Her father, the company's late founder, had left behind a will, and in it, he had quietly willed his controlling shares of the company to her, his daughter, Evelyn Carter. Her breath caught as she read the words again and again. Controlling shares. Not Daniel. Not Michael. Not Sophia. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped the letter. She pressed it to her chest, tears spilling down her face. But these were not the same tears of despair she had shed days before. These were tears of something new. Her father had not abandoned her. He had not been blind to who she was. He had seen her. He had trusted her. And Daniel didn't know. The thought filled her with both terror and fire. The man who had poured wine on her, the man who had mocked her as nothing, the man who had lied to the world about her. He was standing on a throne that wasn't his. And soon he would know it. The weight of the envelope was heavy in her hand, heavier than any crown. It was proof, it was power, it was destiny. She sat at her table in silence, staring at the words. Her mind swirled with fear, doubt, hope, fury. She was still trembling, still broken in so many ways, but for the first time the ground beneath her didn't feel like it was crumbling, felt solid. The letter trembled in her grip as she whispered into the quiet of her apartment. The night of reckoning is near. The chandeliers glittered above the grand hotel ballroom, their lights spilling across polished floors and golden walls. The same hall, the same stage, the same velvet curtains. It was here not long ago that Evelyn Carter had sat drenched in red wine while laughter cut her to pieces. Tonight she walked back into that very room. Her heart pounded, but her steps were steady. The smell of cologne, roasted meat, and expensive wine filled the air, along with the sound of voices buzzing with excitement. The company's annual crowning of the new CEO was about to begin. Daniel Blake walked in ahead of her, as though he owned the world. His suit was sharp, his smile broad, his eyes glittering with smug certainty. People rose to shake his hand, to pat his back, to congratulate him before the announcement even came. Sophia Miller clung to his arm, her dress shimmering, her smile sharp as glass. Michael Carter followed close behind, his chest puffed out, his tie a little too tight, his pride shining. They sat together near the front, close to the board. Daniel leaned back in his chair, confidence pouring off him. He glanced at Evelyn as she slipped quietly into her seat, slightly behind him, almost hidden in the shadow of his success. He smirked. He leaned toward her, his voice low but sharp enough to cut. Try not to embarrass me again, Evelyn. Sit still. Smile when I'm announced. That's all you're good for. Evelyn didn't reply. She sat with her hands folded, her face calm, though inside her pulse roared like thunder. In her bag, the envelope waited, the sealed letter from the board, proof of her father's will, proof of the truth. The room hushed as the chairman rose. An older man, tall and deliberate in his movements, he carried with him the weight of decades. His voice was calm, steady, the kind that silenced a room without effort. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, we gather tonight not only to celebrate another year of achievement but to honor the legacy of the man who built this company from nothing, Mr. Thomas Carter. Evelyn's throat tightened at the sound of her father's name. She straightened her back, her hands gripping each other tightly beneath the table. The chairman continued. Tonight, we appoint a new CEO, a leader chosen not only by the board, but by the legacy left behind. For weeks, the world has speculated. For weeks, whispers have filled these halls. But tonight, the truth will be spoken. Daniel's smile widened. He adjusted his tie, preparing to stand. Sophia squeezed his hand under the table, her eyes glittering. Michael leaned forward, breathless. The chairman lifted the envelope, the official document bearing the board's decision. He opened it slowly, the sound of paper tearing echoing in the silence of the hall. Daniel rose before his name was even spoken. He spread his arms wide, basking in the moment, soaking in the flashes of cameras. Thank you, he said smoothly, prematurely. It's an honor, truly. But the chairman's voice cut through his words. The new CEO of this company, he said firmly, his eyes sweeping across the room, is Evelyn Carter. The words struck like thunder. Gasps filled the hall. Glasses clinked as hands slipped. Sophia's smile froze. Michael's jaw dropped. Daniel stood frozen mid-bow, his arms still outstretched, his mouth open. For a long moment silence ruled. Then whispers erupted, sharp and loud. Evelyn. Did he say Evelyn Carter? But Daniel, what about Daniel? Daniel stumbled, his face twisting with fury. No, that's impossible. You must have made a mistake. He pointed sharply toward the chairman. This isn't right. I've earned this. Everyone knows it. The chairman's gaze didn't flinch. The late Thomas Carter willed his controlling shares of this company to his daughter, Evelyn Carter. By his wishes, and by the unanimous vote of the board, she is to be our new CEO. All eyes turned to Evelyn. Slowly, she rose. Her steps were steady, her face calm, her gown simple but dignified. She walked toward the front of the hall, the same path she had taken weeks ago when she fled in humiliation. But tonight, her head was high, her back straight, her eyes clear. The whispers grew louder, then fell into silence as she reached the stage. Daniel's voice broke through, raw and furious. You can't do this. She's nothing. She's unstable, a liar, an embarrassment. You all saw her. She's weak, pathetic. She doesn't deserve this. Evelyn turned to him, her voice quiet but cutting. Last time you poured wine on me. Tonight I pour truth on you. She lifted the documents from her bag, holding them high for the board to see. Daniel Blake has been embezzling company funds. Here, every transfer, every number, every account. He has stolen from this company while pretending to build it. Gasps filled the room again, sharper this time. The board members leaned forward, their eyes narrowing, their faces hardening as they scanned the pages. Daniel's face drained of color. Lies. Forged documents. She made this up. But his voice faltered as Richard Hayes rose from his seat. The elder board member held up another folder thick with evidence. No, Daniel. We have investigated these numbers. Miss Carter is correct. You are guilty. Daniel's knees weakened. He stumbled back into his chair, his hand gripping the edge of the table. Sophia tried to recover, her voice sharp. She's lying. She's jealous, bitter. Daniel would never. But Evelyn turned to her, her eyes steady. Don't pretend, Sophia. Everyone knows about you too. I heard the whispers, the late nights, the way you laughed while I cried. You betrayed me not as a stranger, but as someone I once called sister. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Sophia's mask cracked. Her face reddened as eyes turned toward her, judgment heavy in every glance. Michael rose suddenly, desperate. Evelyn, please don't do this. You're destroying us, your family. Dad would never. But Evelyn cut him off, her voice sharp with steel. Dad saw you for what you are, Michael. That's why he didn't leave you the company. You betrayed me for money, for promises, Daniel whispered. You called me a disgrace. But tonight, the disgrace is yours. Michael's mouth opened, then closed. He slumped back into his chair, his head bowed. Silence filled the hall. All eyes were on Evelyn. No longer drenched in wine, no longer trembling, no longer broken. She stood tall, the light of the chandeliers gleaming above her like a crown. The chairman stepped forward, his voice ringing clear. Evelyn Carter, by the will of your father, and the unanimous vote of this board, we crown you as CEO. Applause began slowly, hesitant at first, then stronger, louder, until the hall thundered with it. Not laughter, not mockery, applause. Daniel sat in silence, his face twisted in fury, his dreams collapsing. Sophia's eyes burned with rage as she realized her place beside him was gone. Michael hid his face in shame. Evelyn stood where she had once sat broken, drenched not in wine but in dignity. The same hall that had echoed with cruel laughter now thundered with her triumph. She lifted her chin, her voice calm and sharp as a blade. Betrayal can strip dignity but character, and truth restore it with greater power. Tonight I take back what was mine, not in spite of my suffering, but because I endured it. The room rose to their feet. The applause was deafening. Evelyn Carter had been humiliated, betrayed, abandoned. But tonight she was crowned, not with a glass of wine but with power, not with shame but with honor. And as she stood before them, the weight of her father's legacy on her shoulders, the same hall that once destroyed her now lifted her higher than she had ever dreamed. The crown of power rested not on Daniel Blake, not on Sophia Miller, not on Michael Carter, but on Evelyn Carter, the woman they had all underestimated. The laughter was gone. Only her triumph remained.